All right, looks like we got a video there. Good evening. My name is Don Ficken. I'm with the Library Telescope Task Force, and we've been doing this program of webinars about once a month for quite some time. And we're very happy tonight to talk about a subject that everybody's just going to love. It's the Lunar Eclipse coming up here in May. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've got Michelle Nichols from Adler Planetarium here, and we're really looking forward to it. And behind the scenes is Tom Lynch. And if you guys are on the Facebook, Tom Lynch is the guy that's made that happen. He's done such great cartoons and comics and comments and things. It really made it work. So if you're not familiar with the Library Telescope program, it's a program where you can check out a library telescope or binoculars from a library itself. And believe it or not, we're actually sort of worldwide. We've got a lot of locations in the USA, in Canada, and even in Europe. We got Netherlands, the United Kingdom. We're very excited. We've been building this task force for some time. We get together once a month. We share best practices and do what we can to really show that. So if you go to librarytelescope.org and just go to locations, you can explore that, click on the US map, go down to your state and find whatever libraries that we at least know about that might have a telescope for checkout or binoculars for checkout. Well, we're going to have some program opportunities. Obviously, the lunar eclipse is coming up, but for those of you who want to look at the sky without light pollution, help us celebrate the International Dark Sky Week, which starts the 22nd through the 30th. And that'll be a good chance. So if you're a library, this is a great chance to talk about the brightness of the sky and just what you can see, and maybe turn off a few lights here and there, because obviously that's very important to protect our night sky. If we're a little bit later in the year, for the libraries out there, we're promoting what's called the Library Telescope Observing Week, International Library Telescope Observing Week. And what we're trying to do is just pick a week. In this case, it's October 9th through the 16th of this year, where pretty much you're going to say, look, let's celebrate Library Telescope program. There'll be craters on the moon. You can look at Jupiter. The planets will start to be coming up at that time. It's a great chance. There's a flyer on librarytelescope.org. That you can download, and that'll be something you could distribute in your libraries. So tonight's program is get ready for the May 2022 lunar eclipse. You can see some of the programs we've done in the past. We did one last month about Wichita, Kansas Library. They're sharing their experiences. It was a lot of fun, and binocular viewing in the winter skies before that. And next month, we've set up a program on spring constellations. You'll be surprised that if you learn constellations, you can actually use those constellations to find specific objects to look at in your telescope or binoculars. It might be a double star, it might be a galaxy, or something kind of fun. So we'll talk about that. So we're very excited. I encourage you to visit our website, librarytelescope.org. If you do that and you go up the very top right, you'll see a YouTube button, and you can see all these different videos in the past. And we don't want to forget about the Facebook page, because we have got a lot of great content. Like I say, Tom Lynch has been doing a wonderful job out there, and he's got a lot of great stuff here. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to turn this program over to Michelle Nichols. She knows a lot more about this stuff. Yes.
Don, excuse me, I don't see it flowing on Facebook.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Are you? Okay. All right, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm actually watching, I believe so. Hopefully I did that right. Hang on just a second there.
Got it now. Sorry.
Okay, got it. Okay, great. Yeah, Facebook is working. I just got a comment there. So anyway, forgot to turn my camera back up. So Michelle, I'm going to turn this over to you. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. It's just really very exciting to have this lunar eclipse. They're not, rare, but it's going to be a lot of fun here. Can you hear me okay, Michelle? You got your good mic here? It always works this way. You get always a few technical problems here and there, and that's quite all right. There you go. I've been doing Zoom for a while and Facebook for a while, and no matter what happens, there's always a little kink somewhere. Just to test your patience, so to speak. You good now, Michelle? You think? Are you able to hear me? Okay, getting there. There
we go.
All righty, awesome. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to you, and looking forward to hearing what you have to say. This lunar eclipse is going to be fun.
Excellent, thank you. Sorry about the little audio gaffe right there. Of course, the little USB thing for my headset decided at that exact moment, that's when it needed to be reset. So,
So let me say this before we get started. I didn't mention that we will be taking questions at the end. So if you're on Zoom, just put them in the the chat area, or the Q&A area rather. If you're on Facebook, just put in the comments area and we'll be answering questions to the end. Sorry about that. Michelle, why don't you go ahead and take it off?
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Nichols, and I am the Director of Public Observing at the Adler Planetarium in Chicago. I'm so happy to be with you tonight. I'm part of the Library Telescope group as well. And it's just so great to see so many telescopes getting to so many libraries around the world. So we just hope that this number increases over time. So what we're going to do, though, is talk about a great sky event coming up, tell you how to see it, when to see it. It's called the lunar eclipse. It's called a total lunar eclipse, and it's coming up on Sunday, May 15th. So let me share my screen, and give me just a second. There we go.
Looks good.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. All right. So if you're watching in the US, this eclipse will start on the evening of Sunday, May 15th. If you're watching over in Europe or Africa or Asia or anywhere over there, the eclipse will start for you at the same time, but it's a little bit later. So at the same time that the eclipse starts for everybody else, excuse me, Asia probably won't see this one. We'll actually show a little map in a second as to where exactly you'll be able to see this eclipse. But if the moon is up for you when the eclipse actually starts, you'll be able to see it. And for some people, it may be the early morning of Monday, May 16th. So I'll get to that in just a second. This will make more sense when I can show a map. But give me just a second. I want to explain what a lunar eclipse is, and then we will go to some resources that you can use to figure out exactly when to go out, exactly where to look, and it'll be a lot of fun. It just needs to be clear out, which in the Chicago area is not always a given. So we got our fingers crossed for May 15th. All right. So what a lunar eclipse is when you have a special lineup of the sun, the earth, the moon. So the moon's orbit around the Earth takes it around the Earth about every little less than 30 days, 30 Earth days. And the moon's orbit is tilted just a bit with respect to the Earth. And so as the moon goes around the Earth, we have what are called the phases of the moon. So you see the moon lit, the amount of the moon that's lit at any one time. Sometimes you see none of it lit. We call that new moon. Sometimes you see all of it lit, or the side that's facing Earth is the side that is completely lit. We call that full moon. And you've got your other phases as well. So depending on how much you see, that is the phase of the moon. You can have a crescent or gibbous or something like that. So a lunar eclipse happens when the Earth, the sun, the moon, the sun, the Earth, the moon are lined up exactly so that the moon passes through the shadow cast by the Earth in space. So the sun casts its light on the Earth casts a shadow behind, and the moon, if its orbit is lined up just right, can pass into that shadow. That's when you start to see the moon looking kind of maybe an orange color, a red color, a gray color. We actually never know what color we're going to get till it happens. So that's kind of a fun thing to watch for a lunar eclipse. We don't get a lunar eclipse every single time the moon goes around the Earth, however, because of that tilt. Usually the moon passes a little bit above the shadow or a little bit below the shadow. When it passes through the shadow, that's when we get the lunar eclipse. This is just like the last drawing, not to scale, very much not to scale, but this just gives you another sense of what's going on. So again, when the moon is passing through the Earth's shadow, we've got the lunar eclipse. There are two parts of the shadow. You got a lighter outer part and a darker inner part. When the moon's in that lighter outer part of the shadow, it's kind of hard to tell there's anything going on at all. When it starts to get into that darker inner shadow, that's when you can see the lunar eclipse beginning. It looks like there's a little shadowy bite taken out of the moon. As the moon is going farther into the shadow, you see the shadow start to creep, appear to creep across the surface of the moon. What you're really seeing is the movement of the moon itself into that shadow and then out of the shadow. Total time for the eclipse is from beginning to end, when you start to see that little bite of a shadow till the little bite is gone, is over 3 hours. So it's a very sedate event. It's also a great event for just your eyes or for a telescope or a pair of binoculars. So we encourage all types of observation for something like a lunar eclipse. The times that you see listed on this screen are specific to the central time zone. So for us in the Chicago area, in the central time zone, the eclipse will begin at 9:27 p.m. Central Daylight Time on Sunday, May 15th, 2022. That's when we start to see that little bite of the shadow as the moon starts to move into the darker part. When the moon is fully within the shadow, that's called totality, and that's when we get that gray or red or orange color. That begins at 10:29 p.m. Central Daylight Time. The point of maximum eclipse, that's when the moon is basically in the middle part of the trip through the shadow. That's at 11:11 p.m. When totality ends, when the moon starts to exit the dark part of the shadow in Central Time, it's 11:53. The eclipse fully ends at a little bit before 1 o'clock in the morning on May 16th. If you're in a different time zone, what you need to do is take your times from the central time zone, and wherever you are, add or subtract however many hours you are away from the central time zone. If you're in the Eastern time zone, all these times here, add an hour. If you're in the Mountain time zone, subtract an hour. What this means is it's kind of cool to think about. You can go outside at exactly the same time, 10:27 p.m. Eastern Time, 9:27 p.m. Central Time, 8:27 p.m. Mountain Time. You're all going out at exactly the same time and looking up at exactly the same moon, seeing it do exactly the same thing. This kind of lunar eclipse brings us under the sky we all share. And you can see what the moon can look like when it's fully within the shadow. Again, you can get that kind of reddish color. Sometimes it's hard to see the moon being this red. Our eyes aren't terribly sensitive to red. Photographs often show the color a little more vibrant than you might see it with just your eyes. So if you don't see this color, it's okay. A lot of times our eyes might not be showing the vibrancy, but what you can see here is the curved shape of the shadow. You're seeing the curved shape of the Earth's shadow. The Earth is round, therefore the shadow is curved. All right, we're going to go to two resources. So these resources, I'm going to show you how to navigate them so you can see exactly where and when to look for this eclipse. So let me do a different screen share. So give me just a second. All right. Cool. All right. This is the website called Time and Date. And what you want to do is you want to go to timeanddate.com. And you want to go to the Sun and Moon drop-down menu. Go right down here to the one called Eclipses. Click that. And there are eclipses coming up. Now, not all of them are visible all over the world. Of course, eclipses happen in a finite time period. And so the eclipse may or may not be visible to a certain part of the planet. For example, the May 15th total lunar eclipse, there is a solar eclipse that precedes it, but that eclipse will only be visible in the southern part of South America and getting into the southern part of the Pacific Ocean. So that one, even though it happens, it doesn't mean everybody on the planet is going to see that particular eclipse, especially a solar eclipse. Pretty confined as to where that one will be visible. But when you've got a lineup of the sun, the earth, the moon to show you a lunar eclipse, you'll get a solar eclipse either 2 weeks prior to the lunar eclipse or 2 weeks after. In this case, it's 2 weeks prior. So you want to click the link for the May 15th, 16th total lunar eclipse, and I'll do that. All right, then you want to pay attention to the line that says, is this total lunar eclipse visible in? And then it'll pick probably the closest larger city near you. So I'm in the western suburbs of Chicago. It's asking me, is this total lunar eclipse visible in Chicago? registering that that's the closest bigger city. So I'm going to click that. And there we go. This eclipse is visible in Chicago, and you can see the visibility map is over here on the right-hand side of the screen. If you keep scrolling down, you can get a sense of what this eclipse is going to look like for you. So I'm going to click and hold this slider bar here as we see the moon in this animation passing into the lighter part of the shadow. Not much difference till it gets closer to the darker part of the shadow. That's when you start to see a big difference. Then as it gets closer and closer to the dark part of the shadow, you'll start to really see that color. When it's fully within the shadow, then we get whatever color it is that we're going to see. It exits the darker part of the shadow, and then it exits the lighter part of the shadow. All right, so the animation will show you, you can either click the play button and it'll play the animation for you, or you can just click and drag like I just did and speed up time. If you keep scrolling down below that box, you'll get the times and the directions to look and the altitudes for your specific location, for your whatever the big city is close to you. So again, you can see those same times that we had listed on the slide that I showed you before. Tells you exactly what times. And again, if you're in a different time zone, if the eclipse is visible for you, then those times will be adjusted for the time zone that you're in. And then the directions, these are taken from north is 0. If we were looking to the north, the arrow would point straight up on the screen right here, but this is going to be to the southeast. So that's where the arrow is pointing. And as the moon progresses through the shadow, it's moving in our sky, at least here in Chicago, more toward the south. And so then we have the eclipse ending here. We also got the altitude. So the moon starts off rather low in the sky during the eclipse. It's not too long after the moon rises that night because when the sun goes down, the moon rises for full moon. So makes sense that this eclipse is starting not too long for us after moonrise, which is great. That means we get to see, at least we here in Chicago get to see the entire eclipse. And you can see the moon getting a little higher in the sky and a little higher in the sky. It's not going to get terribly high. It's just the moon's path through the sky this time of year is not incredibly high. So as long as you have a clear view, as long as you don't have clouds in the sky, you'll be able to see this eclipse. All right, so just to show you what that will look like in a simulated sky, I'm going to click over to a different website called Stellarium. And Stellarium has a free online star map. When you bring up the website, stellarium-web.org, you will have it start off at on the screen. It will probably adjust to your location. Again, I'm in the western suburbs of Chicago, so it knows my location. I'm also going to get rid of this menu over here on the left. We don't need it, so I'm going to click this 3-bar menu right there, and that got rid of it. All right, and then I'm going to go forward in time. It's currently set for tonight's date, so I want to go to May 15th. Come on, one more, there we go. And so then we want to scroll around and you can see the moon not too long after sunset. You got the moon to the southeast. I'm going to use the little roll bar on my mouse and scroll inward. And then I'm going to go forward in time. So the main time period for this eclipse is between about 9:30 p.m. Central Time and about a little before midnight Central Time. So as we do that, I'm going to go forward in time, and you can see the simulation is showing how the moon is visible in the sky as we go forward in time. And it will go farther and farther into the shadow in the simulation. And so if I scroll back out, you can take a look, and we're going to go forward by hours. Now we're fully within the shadow. We're more toward the south. The moon is fairly low in the sky until we get to a little bit before midnight when totality ends. And so the moon is exiting the dark part of the shadow. And it's again toward the south here in Chicago. If you're interested in some of the other features of this site, you can click on constellation lines to see the constellation that's visible in the sky. If you scroll inward on your screen or scroll toward something in the sky, it'll start to bring up more information for you, like the names of bright stars and other objects that might be visible. If you're interested in the artwork for the constellations, it'll show you that as well. But one of the other features that's great is if you have a laptop that you might want to take outside, of course, you don't want to totally ruin your night vision. So you want to click the little eyeball and go into night mode, and it'll bring up the red screen so that it will not ruin your night vision. You can also put everything outside the edges and just bring it up full screen, and that way you can use this along with viewing the moon in the sky. Again, not ruining your night vision. And then we can get back out. There we go. All right, so simple as that. The lunar eclipse is something that it's accessible to everyone. You go outside, you look up. Just what time zone you're in will determine whether or not you can see the eclipse. And one other thing I wanted to point out, let me go back to the time and date site really quickly just to point out one more thing. And that is the Eclipse Worldwide Map. So when you click on the Eclipse Worldwide Map, then I'm going to scroll downward a little bit. So if you're within this heavily pink version, of the map, then you'll see the entire eclipse. If you want to get the specific timings for your location or for any location, you just click on the map, and it'll bring up the timings for whatever place that you brought up, or you can search for a specific location, and it will bring up that information as well. So many different ways to get at this information. If you're in one of these other boundary areas, you may miss part or most of the eclipse, but the site will tell you that. So over here in Europe and Africa, you'll be able to see some of the eclipse. Down in South America, you'll see the whole thing. Central America, most of it will see the whole thing, or sorry, all of it will see the whole thing. Most of North America will see at least part of it. And if you're outside, if you're in a spot on this planet that's not covered by shading on this map, unfortunately, you don't get to see this one. So fingers crossed for you for the next one. All right.
All right.
Do we have any
cool.
questions that we want to cover right now?
Yes, we do. And by the way, I did post the links to Stellarium and to time and date in the Zoom and Facebook comments area. So the first question is always, this is a good question at this time of year. What about clouds? Can you see the moon if there's clouds?
Depends on the clouds. If they're those high, thin cirrus clouds, those wispy ones, you might be able to. It just depends on how thick the cloud layer is. If there's thick, puffy clouds, but there's some holes in between, you might get a hole in the right spot, but you may miss a bunch of the eclipse. You just have to wait for one of those holes to pass over where the moon is. Clouds are the bane of every observer's existence because we are absolutely at the mercy of the clouds.
Yes.
We actually are at the mercy of the clouds even more on Chicago's lakefront because cold water, warmer air means fog, clouds. It could be cloudy where the Adler is, and 2 miles inland, it can be completely clear. So yes, you're at the mercy of the clouds.
All right. So our next question is coming from Zoom here. It says, what will you actually see in the library telescope? I know that looking through at the eclipse just with your eyes is terrific, but how will it differ from the, say, telescope and binoculars?
Bigger view, more magnified. And so you'll be able to see craters on the moon a little bit more clearly. You'll be able to see some detail, some shading on the moon. For some of the larger craters, you'll see the shadow creeping across some of those larger craters. And so that sort of thing is kind of neat. You're seeing the moon magnified through the telescope and through the binoculars. So a little bit bigger view than with just your eyes. So trying to actually see as the moon is passing into the shadow, seeing the shadow appear to creep across those craters. That's actually pretty neat to do. Keep your eye up to that telescope, keep it pointed at the moon and observe. We don't teach observing too well in schools, in just general life. We don't tell people what to do. That means really look at it, enjoy it, keep your eye on it, watch it over a long period of time. Notice different parts of the moon, some things that you might not notice otherwise, but you've got some contrast in color and shading. And so that might help bring out some information that you might not have seen otherwise.
So let me ask you this. It seems like this is a really good time. It looks like I didn't post the links to everybody. I just did to the panelists, so I reposted them. So it seems like this would be a great time to go out and find a moon map, right? And start saying, well, the shadow is coming up on a particular crater. What is that crater, right? So
Yep.
do you have any suggestions about real good resources around that? I guess there's probably many if they just do a little bit of homework.
Oh, there's a lot. You can just look up any map that is, you can just do a search for labeled crater moon map. And you'll get so many. So yeah, simple
Well,
as that.
the good thing is the same side of the moon really is facing us all the time. So it's not like you have to wait for some other side to come around, right?
Correct. There's only one side you need to learn.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So here's a really common question that at least I run into whenever we're doing outreach programs. They always want to take a picture of the moon. Now, of course, they can take it with their phone, just put it up there and take a good shot, right? But what about through the library telescope? Can you take a picture through the library telescope?
Totally. What you do is you take your phone and put it on the camera setting, and you would hold the camera up to the eyepiece. Now make sure you got it on the moon to begin with, and then hold it up to the eyepiece. You may have to jiggle it around a little bit to get the lens of the camera of whichever one it's actually using to be able to show the moon. You may have to pull the camera away from the eyepiece just a tiny bit and then hit the photo button. It helps to have a second person be there to be the one to hit the shutter, so you can use both hands to hold the camera. And also turn your flash off. Make sure your flash is off for this. The other thing is, right before you take the picture, tap the screen. Depending on where you tap the screen, that will cause your camera to adjust either the contrast or the focus. So you may have to play with that a little bit. Again, that's where it helps to have a second person. So you're holding your camera steady. It's really hard to do with one hand, or it can be. So yeah, tap the screen, move it around a little bit. It may confuse your phone. You're going to have a light part and a dark part. So you may have to play with that a little bit to see what kind of picture you get. But you can get some fantastic pictures of the moon with just your phone.
Yeah, I think I've even seen people actually pinch just a little bit bigger before they take the shot, and it'll really bring out that gorgeous detail. And this is going to be sort of a orangey, I guess, look, right? Not just a pure white, which a pure white can sometimes wash out a little bit if it's bright full moon, right? But this will be a very pretty color, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
The last one was a gorgeous color. Oh, it was amazing. It was the one in November. It was really good.
All right, so I have a question here. Is there a good place to find what the cloud cover might be? You know, if you're trying to predict, let's say you want to go somewhere away from the city to where you want to see something. So where can you go to find maybe the cloud cover?
Yeah, so there are a few different locations. So I keep about 9 different websites linked on my computer. And there is one here, let me share my screen real quick. Hang on. I'm going to go to a site. Here we go. And let me share. All right. So here's one. It's cleardarksky.com. And this is the clear sky chart for Chicago. And there are clear sky charts for a lot of different locations. And this is showing you what the likelihood is for seeing clear sky where you are. You want to have your squares during the eclipse time be blue. If it's white, it's probably going to be cloudy. If it's blue, it might be clear. Drawbacks. Number one, this is based on the Canadian Meteorological Center's models, and they only update twice a day. The National Weather Service updates a little more often, but this will at least get you close. So you can click on one of these boxes. It'll show you the expected cloud cover for a particular for that particular location. So pick one of these locations, go down the list and pick one that's closest to your location. And that's one thing that you can do. Another thing is the National Weather Service has what's called the graphical forecast. You'll have to pick the graphical forecast for your region of the country. This is the upper Midwest graphical forecast. Depending on where you are, you'll find the graphical forecast for your specific region. So you'll have to look that up, but go to sky cover. Oh, sorry, this is the weekly view. There's a daily view. That's probably the one that'll come up. You want the weekly view. I just find it easier to handle. And then you go to the column over here on the, whoops, that's not the one I want. I want the cloud cover. Hang on. There we go. Sky cover. So keep clicking the arrows till you get it. And if you mouse over the different times, you'll see the expected cloud cover and the percentage of cloudiness for that region during those times. This gets updated a few times a day, so definitely go back and check as you get closer to the eclipse, especially if the weather is pretty changeable. So check a few different sites, and that's definitely a good habit to get into. The last one is Clear Outside, and Clear Outside is a good resource. So it opens up for the current date, and if you scroll down, it'll do more dates. You just click on one of the dates, and the information at the top will show you what the likelihood is for cloudiness for low clouds, medium clouds, high clouds, and total clouds. Way more information than you probably want, but it's great to have more than one forecast. That's why I usually go to 9 different forecasts.
Oh my goodness. So I have one more question. We're about ready
Sure.
to wrap up here, but
Yep.
I guess the question is, of course, the normal, when the moon is completely bright, like full moon, it's very bright. It washes out the stars. It washes out the constellations. Will you be able to see more when this lunar eclipse happens? Will you be able to see the constellations a little better, you think?
You might. Yeah, you're taking away the brightest thing in the sky at that point. So the moon adds to our sky glow. So yeah, you might see a few dimmer stars. Now, if you're under a very light polluted area, it might not make a huge difference to your area. If you're under a dark sky, it might actually make a difference. So it just depends on your situation and where exactly you're located. It's a great experiment. Go out at 9:27 Central Time and look at the sky, see how much you see. Go out an hour and a half later when it's in totality. Do you see more? Yeah. So give it a try.
So the good thing about this, whereas a solar eclipse, a total solar eclipse happens pretty fast. You only got a few minutes to see this. This is actually going to happen over quite a while. So you can make adjustments to where you are to get the best early view. So
exactly.
Well, this is great, Michelle. I really appreciate your working with us tonight. A great presentation. This is going to be a fun event. It's something that we'll all get to enjoy. You don't have to go anywhere special. Just look with your eyes. You got a telescope, you got binoculars. Enjoy it with the family. And they're not really rare, but I think there's even one later this year, as I remember. And yep. So I think if you just go out and have a good time, you're going to find some great time, and hopefully the weather cooperates. So. And
quick things about going out, especially if you're going to stay out for several hours, bundle up. Even if it's not terribly cold where you are, still wear layers, layer up. Right. You're gonna get a little dewy. Hopefully it's not going to snow where you're at. Get your feet up off the ground. Your feet are going to get cold first. Wear a hat, bring some hot chocolate, and this, no joke, don't drink alcohol, because the alcohol actually makes your body colder. So if you're going to be out for a long time, you don't want to get too cold. So that alcohol actually does do some negative things for that. So don't throw any brandy in the hot chocolate. All right. But yeah, layer up and give it a go.
Well, thanks, Michelle, and thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. Tom, thanks for helping me in the back end there, making sure everything's really working. So we will, it's on Facebook now, so when we stop, you'll be able to get to it, and it'll probably be Friday before I get it out on YouTube. Just go to librarytelescope.org, click the YouTube button later in the day, and it should be there. Again, next month, we're going to talk about spring constellations. Learn again how to find, once you find a constellation, you can find actually some objects around that constellation. They're great objects for the binoculars and for the library telescope. And thanks to everyone for helping, and we will look forward to having you join us next month. Thanks again, Michelle.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.